Welcome, everybody, to Huddle Up with Matias Bueno, episode 13. Today's guest is defensive back from the University of Manitoba Bisons, Reina Iizuka. Reina, thanks so much for joining us today on Huddle Up.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Reina, let's get the first thing out of the way. Obviously, with USports, we know the unfortunate conclusion to the 2020 fall season is that they had to cancel all games for football. And so, obviously, that has a bit of an effect on the players and all programs across the country. What has been your take on the situation with the canceling of the season, and how have you approached adjusting to not playing football this fall for the Bisons?
Um, Man, it's just sort of like whatever's necessary to keep people healthy and safe for the long term and the long run. I think, certain steps were necessary. And I kind of saw it coming, like the season being canceled. Phase two hasn't even hit us yet. And numbers are, COVID numbers are starting to rise. So, it's kind of, I saw it coming already. So I've been already preparing for it mentally. And like I had torn my ACL. So in terms of working out at home in Toronto, I've been kind of fortunate that way, like not needing that much weight because I was still pretty early on in the ACL rehabbing process. So the transition from, having regular access to facility to, everything being shut down and having no resources and having to think sort of outside the box to get your job done. It wasn't too bad for me, to be honest.
So now with the orientation of how the season will progress for next season, now there's a whole rookie class of players that are joining the team with no games to look forward to in the fall. So in terms of preparation for you guys as a team and for yourself as a player, what do you look forward to most now, knowing that there's a 2-year gap between last season and the next season?
I didn't really think of it as a 2-year gap, actually. Now that you say it, I've been like, me personally, like it is what it is, and I don't feel like, I'm pretty neutral about it. I'm not in a position where I'm worrying. I'm not in a position where I'm like laid back or whatever. I'm just sort of, at this point, you got to go with the flow and literally just control what you can control. There's nothing, how you feel about it doesn't really matter because the situation is what it is and you got to deal with it. So I don't know what to expect. And I'm sure everybody doesn't know what to expect. So it kind of just is what it is, and just kind of going with the flow is how you got to deal with it.
For sure. And so to take it back a little bit, so you played your football based out of the GTA in Mississauga and in Toronto, and were a part of the Toronto Junior Argonauts. And so what was it about coming to Manitoba, or what was the experience that you were looking forward to when the opportunity was presented to yourself to be a part of the Manitoba Bisons?
The different culture. So I'm so used to, excuse me, central sort of East Canada, and I really wanted to experience like prairie and what it was like out west. So it definitely was a culture shock. It wasn't so much the football, like, football is football, but I was more so like kind of interested about the culture and the people and the sort of team dynamic, because the people in the area are going to make up your team, especially when you're out west. I feel like a lot of teams, they recruit based from home. So a lot of our guys are either from Winnipeg or Manitoba or out west, like BC area. Coach likes to recruit the BC guys. So it was just the dynamic of how things work. That's what I was looking forward to.
And do you find that there is a big difference in the way that of how you transition to the culture of living in Winnipeg and in the prairies in comparison to Southern Ontario?
Yeah. There's a big difference. between well, for at least my experience out west and the GTA, from football to the conversations, how people joke, how people just communicate, is very, very different.
For sure. And especially with being in a new province and Manitoba being more central, did you find that there were some things that were enjoyable right off the bat, or how did you first react to arriving in Winnipeg?
It took time for me to enjoy out west. It was a culture shock, and it was hard to communicate. Like, I'm socializing with people was the least of my worries leaving Ontario, because I'm, if you know me, I'm very social. I could talk to pretty much anybody, back home. So going to Winnipeg, I didn't even think that was going to be an issue. I was only worried about football and school, but now it became the culture, football, and school, and then being away from home. It just sort of all piled up on top of each other, which I wasn't expecting. So it took me about a year and a half to actually really get accustomed to everything. It took a while.
Absolutely. And it can definitely be different even for people from Winnipeg going vice versa to Ontario, to Southern Ontario. If they've never been before the GTAs, it can be a big culture shock as well.
Yeah.
And so going back to the origins of when you first started playing football, what was it that attracted you to playing the game in general? And how long did you realize, how long had it been until you realized that football was a game that you wanted to play for a very long time?
Uh, so I started when I was 9. I was in an after-school care program, and this teacher, she taught me she taught me how to throw a spiral. And I was pretty fascinated by the fact that like a ball could spiral, because you're used to like soccer balls, baseballs, whatever. It was just unique. And then I was friends with most of the guys, so we brought out a football to the playground, and we would play like tackle and touch, literally all year, every recess, like winter time, fall time, summertime, springtime, whatever. And I just love the physicality of it, and like how much energy you have to output and input to get results. And man, like I made that decision pretty quick. Like it just boom, like it was a spark in my head and like in my chest. I just knew, my intuition told me like, this is what you're going to do until this is going to be your goal for by the time you reach 18 years old. And I didn't have to second guess myself. Like I trusted my intuition. I knew what it was that I wanted to do, and I rolled with it. So.
And then did you start playing organized tackle football shortly after you were 9 years old?
Yeah. Yes. Right away.
And especially with playing organized football at such a young age, there's a variety of backgrounds that I've noticed when you get to the university level, that there's half the amount of people have been playing football forever and ever, and then some of them only pick up football later on in life. So did you find
Yeah.
that it gave you an advantage or a disadvantage as you got older, having played football for longer, or did it not
Mm,
make as much of an effect?
I think like in terms of the taking away the physical aspect of things and the actual on-field side of things, I think the just dealing with things mentally and dealing with decisions that are being made, or politics that might occur, not necessarily with like our team, but like just in the sports world in general, um, especially because of my position being female. I've been through a lot of politics and a lot of things that just don't make sense, and things that weren't fair. Life's not fair, but decisions that were made, um, and I was, I've been treated pretty poorly sometimes. Been treated great, but also I've had pretty negative experiences as well at face value. So I think seeing certain, seeing certain struggles that the guys now are experiencing, and hearing that, and then like communicating that with me, or just, in the locker room, you hear things. I already experienced that because I've been playing for so long, and because naturally, like, the position that I'm in, being female. So now I'm kind of like, wow, like when some guys are talking about their struggles, or certain things that just does not make sense to them, or things that they're trying to overcome, or like them just trying to get better, um it's like memories and flashbacks of, oh, I went through that same thing when I was 13, or oh my God, like I went through that like last year, or oh geez, that happened to me when I was 10 years old. So it's just kind of, I don't know so much. It's kind of so to answer your question, it is kind of an advantage, because I can accept things, and I can accept certain situations, and I can kind of sit back now and just be calm about things. So not necessarily an advantage like physically on the field and in training and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but just sort of that side of sports, not being so flustered about it, because I had already been through that.
So you talk about the position that you were in that presented some challenges for you at face value and throughout your career, with politics in and out of your team. So having been probably one of the only females on the teams that you'd played on growing up,
Yep.
did you ever, what was the biggest learning curve that you had to overcome in the first few years of you playing football with the situation you were in?
The first like couple of years, you mean, like right off the bat?
Yeah.
Man, like literally my first team that I ever played for, we were 8-0 and then won the championship. Second team, we won the championship, and I was named team captain for the first time, which really boosted my confidence. So from the get-go, I already had this momentum and support from my team. And I had great coaches, like really great, solid coaches, really like good guys, man, like good players around me. And we had this trust and respect between each other. And I'm still friends with those guys now. And a lot of them are playing for university or starting their own businesses and stuff. So those first 2 years, if I didn't have like a really good first 2 years, I wouldn't have been able to survive the third year, which was the first time I didn't start because I was a girl. And like I didn't understand it at the time. And you're by that time I was like, I think I was about 13 years old. So I couldn't articulate, you can't articulate how you're feeling at that age.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to talk to my coach about it. And then he kind of, flipped it on me and then started putting me down. And then I was asking my defensive coordinator and my DB coach, I was like, hey, am I not good enough? Like, why am I not on the field? And they said, we want you on the field. You're our team captain. You should be starting. But unfortunately, it's not up to us. So that was the first time I was like, oh, this is getting into a little bit of the dirty side, like sort of the adult world a little bit. And I was only about like 12, 13 years old. So learning to just still do my job and my role as team captain and help lead the team and bring people together while having to accept the circumstances that I can't change. And that year was kind of a mess too, because certain decisions, certain positions that people were put in, like for example, I'm not trying to. I really want to make this clear. Like, I'm not trying to put anybody down.
Of
Like,
course.
I'm not trying to badmouth any coaches. I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to be negative. But like, for example, he put an O lineman in the D line position because he just said, I just don't want to deal with him. And he was a good kid, like nothing wrong. Like he had the biggest heart on the team. But coach was just like, I don't want to deal with him. I don't want to coach him on the O line. Put him on the D line. And then he put like linemen and linebacker positions. He put like DBs in the wide receiver positions when they should have been, staying to the DBs. And when you're a kid, like it's not like you can play more than one position, especially when you're starting out really early and just learning the game.
Mm-hmm.
And we were like 2 games into that season, and then coach literally was like to the defensive coordinator, I don't like what you're doing. I'm going to be coaching. And he kind of like slipped his mouth at the end of the season and said, hey, yeah, we were talking. He's like, I don't really know much about defense. And then he caught himself. He's like, oh, I shouldn't have said that because he's an offensive guy. But it was just like having sort of a toxic individual at the head, not being able to trust, the people around him. It affected everybody, not just me, like the coaches, from the management side, from the kids side. The kids are all confused because things are being communicated, things just not making sense. And like, again, I'm not trying to put anybody down. That was just sort of this situation that was happening at the time in that one season.
Absolutely. Yeah. It can be very difficult. And to say that is not a reality of football teams as time goes on it's a falsehood because it occurs throughout many ages and divisions of football, especially as you get older. That can definitely be a bigger problem, considering the fact that football is more winning and business oriented as you move up in the ranks in comparison to when you're coaching kids that are learning and just trying to have fun in the game, which to me, or to most people, not just me, doesn't make sense. But again, coaches will make the decisions based on how they see fit or what they think benefits them sometimes. And I remember having a conversation at a football practice with Bob Cameron. He'd come out to help us and said to me, you could have 80 guys here or 100 guys, and you could ask two coaches to choose 40 people for the team, and they could both choose completely different teams. So don't get down on yourself about the decisions coaches make because you can't control that at the end of the day. Because people always say, well, you can work harder, or you can do this, you can do that. Sometimes the cards are stacked against you no matter what you do. So it doesn't matter, nepotism plays a part, or subjective opinion plays a part. Relationships between players plays a part. So that is something I think that people sometimes don't talk as much about. I always see many people posting on social media, oh, well, parents are asking for their kids to have more playing time, but they need to work hard and sure. Yeah. But the coach's son is in this position and they're not good, but they're the coach's son, right? So obviously, I guess I just need to work a little harder, don't I? I just need to change my last name to be adopted, don't I? So these difficult things happen, and it's incredible to hear the resilience you had at such a young age. Considering the fact that the cards weren't stacked against you just in one way, but in a second, right? Being one of the only female on the teams that you played on for many years can be really difficult. I know when I played football, the very first year I was on a team with a female player, we didn't treat her any differently than any of the other guys, and the coaches respected her, which spoke a lot to the character and values of the organization. But that's not the same across the board. And especially as get higher in football, there's a lot of blatant and overt sexism that happens in sports, especially football seen as a man's sport. Like football's for everybody, but not everyone sees eye to eye with that statement, which is unfortunate. But how did you handle the adversity that you faced as you progressed later on in your years playing football once you got to high school and then OVFL?
Man, like, I have a phenomenal mother. So she was a, young mom, I come from like a single parent household, Japanese values. I was born into a Buddhist family. I wasn't forced on me, but those are my values, and I really connect with that background and her teachings, man. Like I say this to a lot of people because this was my reality. um, she literally started telling me once I was able to start understanding things. I remember from like 5, 6 years old, she would tell me, I'm a single parent. You don't have, there's not a number two person bringing in income. This is our situation. And if anything were to happen to me, if I were to die, um, I need you to be prepared. Like I need you to be able to survive on your own, because nobody else is gonna tell you what it is, like how it is, what it is. So I'm gonna do that, and it's gonna be tough, but this is how we're gonna do things in this household. And she would always tell me that. So that's like really ingrained in my head. So how that relates is every time I messed up, or every time I was going through a difficult situation, she would always explain to me why. And she'd say, okay, here's 2 or 3 options. If you go this route, this is what's going to happen. This route, this is what's going to happen. This route, this is what's going to happen. You make the decision. And she made things really clear for me as much as possible, as much as I could understand. And, we talked about politics, work. She would work like 13, 16-hour shifts at work. And luckily, the boss was kind. So he let me sit at the office, and I'd see her do like stacks of files and paperwork. And I like literally, man. And I saw her interact with people. She's customer service based. And I saw her do that. And I heard adults swearing and cussing and being sexual and inappropriate at times and stuff, like racism. Like I saw everything, like everything was fact and reality. So, and my point to this is, because of her explaining things how they were, and she didn't sugarcoat anything, I was able to practice accepting situations, taking a step back, and then analyzing the situation, and then being able to plan and execute from there. So it doesn't matter if I'm angry, it doesn't matter if I'm sad and if I'm hurt, it doesn't matter if I'm super, super happy. Take a step back, look objectively, game plan, and execute. So that's sort of, how I'm able to deal with adversity, is literally just accepting things for what they are. And it sounds easy when you put it like that, but a lot of people can't do that. You see, and I'm not trying to put anybody down, but I grew up with a lot of talented. When you go to football in the GTA, man, is very high level. You got a lot of athletic kids because you have such a huge population and tons of diversity. So you grow up with superstars. Like, these are guys that you're like, okay, if this guy put in work, he could definitely make it to the CFL. Mm-hmm. But the problem is they are allowed too much. So they're not checked when they need to be checked. And a lot of these guys have attitude problems, and that's where they fall off, and they don't have that longevity, because a lot of them come from homes where they don't feel like they're loved. Single parent household, like a lot of them. Some of them, their parents are drug addicts. Some of them, they're coming from all sorts of rough places. So when they hit the football field, it's like that's the one place where they can shine, and they love it, because they do well and they shine and they get recognition. But they have this attitude problem because they're probably insecure, and they're probably hurt, and they're probably missing love. So they don't get checked, and they can't, and my point to this is, they can't face the fact and reality when they get checked. Does that make sense? Or
yeah, 100%. And it's an interesting dynamic you bring up, that there are those missing links, and you were in a situation where there wasn't a missing link because your mom was so good at raising you with values that were going to be useful for your entire life, that you weren't sitting there saying, oh, well, why aren't I going in, or trying to bang your head against the wall. Instead you say, okay, the coach sees things this way, or they have a bias against, girls playing football or whatever it is. I'm going to do X, Y, Z instead, or I'm going to take this avenue. And I think that's really difficult, even for people who become adults to handle later on in life. You don't have to be, a young kid or playing football in high school. And especially in such a diverse population like the one that exists in Southern Ontario, is that you're going to get people that are amazing, but lack work ethic, or you're going to get people that have amazing work ethic, but don't get there because people have bias against those who don't have as much talent, quote unquote. So eventually the cream rises to the top, of course, but with asterisks and with subjectivity in there, because like football games, the best players don't always get there. For whatever reason, or the people who have the opportunities are the ones that get there, right? If you don't have an opportunity, but you could be a talented player, that doesn't matter, because if you don't have the opportunity, you're not going to get there. Like, it's over. So it speaks to the character of your mom, and the way that she raised you, and the resilience that she instilled in you from a young age, seeing many of the ugly realities of the real world and of the adult world when you were young. So when was the first moment that you knew, I can do this, or I can handle the difficulty of the situation, even though this is super hard for most people to do? And I just realized that. Like, when did you finally have like an aha moment that said, wow, I just went through that and I'm still here and I'm still going, and most people that would break their back?
Man, I don't, not until recently, because, and I'm going to bring up my mother again. She, her life story is crazy. So whenever I go through something like that, I would be, one, super grateful, because I always had somebody who supported me, like even though there was somebody negative, I always had, excuse me, that grace, like that another person who really supported me. But also, my mother, she had a really, and still has a really difficult, crazy life. Like, she could have a movie and a book series. Like, her resilience. So whenever I went through something, it was never like I was like, well, it sucked, but on to the next. I know the next thing's gonna happen to me anyways. Not that I'm inviting this negative energy. It's just it's a part of the process, right?
Of course.
You can't always be smooth sailing. I understood that. So when I compared myself to my mother, it was like, like, it's not that bad. So only until, I think, last year, right after I tore my ACL and I sort of figured things out in my head, looking back, I was like, wow, okay, I'm going to give myself some credit. I can't believe I went through all of that. But it really, from 9 years old it took me until I was, just about turning 21 to actually feel some sort of way like that. Because my mother, man, she, for example, she had, no money when she was young. She was an immigrant from Japan and whatever. And she would get like a pack of ground beef, and she would measure it on the scale, and she would divide it up into 7 sections: Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And that sliver of ground beef, that was her meal for the entire day. So if she was starving and she ate Tuesday, then that means Tuesday section, that means she would have no food for Tuesday because she ate Monday's portion of ground beef. Or she walked into the grocery store, and like when you go on the airplane, they give you a little dinner roll.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, so she walked in once and she was starving, and that was gonna be her dinner, was this little roll, but she was missing a few cents. I think it was like a quarter. She was missing about 25 cents. And she asked the lady, like, please, like, this is gonna be my dinner. And the lady said, no, I'm sorry, I can't, I can't cut you some, like she couldn't cut her slack. And so she had no dinner that day. So when you hear that as a kid, you're like, I can handle this. Yeah, it's not that bad, you know?
Yeah,
So,
it's a tough challenge to deal with, the oftentimes the reality of poverty when you're growing up, especially with
uh-huh.
when it comes to wanting to play sports and football, like let alone that, some people don't even have enough to be able to put food on the table or to be able to take care of themselves, and sometimes they're struggling to put that all together. So the fact that your mother was able to deal with that and raise you and give you the opportunity to go play
Yeah,
football and still
yeah.
play to this day is just
Mm-hmm.
like, that's the Netflix special in itself. That's it. That's right there. That's, we're selling the rights to Netflix to that special, because it speaks to the adversity that you had to go through, and especially even looking back, because oftentimes I think people, especially playing football, get so
Mm-hmm.
lost in how crazy things are that
Yeah.
they don't ever stop to think about, wow, how far have
Mm-hmm.
I come? Or like,
Yeah.
wow, I really did this. And especially in my
Yeah.
experience, I remember I was so lost in the next year, the next year, the next year, the
Yep.
next year. That's
Yeah.
what's gonna happen, That's when it's all gonna come
Yes.
together. That's when the world, all the problems will be solved in the world.
Yeah.
And then by the time I got to the end, it
Yeah.
just felt like, oh, that's it. Went to
Yes.
spring camp, got cut, and that was it. And I was like, oh, like, that was, it's over. It's over. And I remember
Mm-hmm.
going home that day, just kind of feeling lost. I'm like, man, like, no more.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have anything else to look forward to. And then I stopped. And then like for the next like almost year, I looked back and I was like, wow, I was able to do this, all
Mm-hmm.
these things, meet all these people, go to all these places. And I never
Yep.
stopped really once to think about how amazing it was in the moment, because I was so focused on what was going to happen rather than what I was doing right there in that moment. And like,
Yeah.
and so I can only imagine in your situation with having torn your ACL, difficult thing for any athlete to face, that being able to look back and give yourself credit, it's a super important thing, because it's a measure. It's like a landmark of success for yourself that you had made it that
Mm-hmm.
far. And so
Right.
with having looked back now at all the things you've been through, what
Mm-hmm.
do you feel the most grateful for right here in this present moment in terms of your football career?
Man, in terms of my football career, that's one thing.
Or you could list a few if one thing is way too hard. That's okay.
Ah, man, like everything. Like there's not one single thing that I can think of that I don't. Like, and I'm not trying to give you like some crap.
Oh, of
Like
course. No, 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 no.
every morning I wake up, I literally say, "Thank you for waking me up. Thank you for waking me up. Thank you for waking me up." I say that, and I put that energy out there to the universe every morning. I say it 3 times, and every night I make sure I thank everybody. Like, thank you to my mother, Coach Dobie, Coach P, Coach U, Coach O, all these like, my trainers back home, Coach Scheller, Lori. Like, I go, you know, to my room, and then I just thank all these people. So, man, like, it's tough because right now the first thing that pops in my head is probably the relationships that I have with my coaches. So it's really funny because growing up, I never really had a problem with the team dynamic. It was always like the adult, like the person at the top that
Mm-hmm.
sort of had issues or whatever with me. But now it kind of flipped when I went to university because the prairie culture, I don't think they weren't expecting something like me. So now I had all of this support from the top, like Coach Dobie, because he knows me, and we've been communicating for the past year and a half. And now I'm having to prove myself to the team more. Not that I haven't had to prove myself to all the other teams that I've been a part of, but it was just the situation kind of flipped. So I kind of experienced both. So those coaches that I look back, I call him, Coach Tim. He was a part of that team where I first encountered politics with that coach that I was talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow, like it's really been about 10 years keeping contact with Coach Tim. And he's like a father to me, man. Like I'm his, he's like my old man. I call him my old man. And, no, he loves me, man. Like we love each other very much. And it really does feel like a father-daughter relationship. He sends me funny memes and stuff. And we're always keeping in contact. And also I'm thinking of like Coach Bob Rainford. He helped coach like San Francisco 49ers. He's an older gentleman, but he gives me so much wisdom and so much support. And and Coach Doby, definitely. And I'm not trying to look, I don't suck up. Like people who don't know me, like they need to know, like I'm not trying to sell anybody anything. I really care about Coach Doby. And his birthday's a day after mine. So, which is kind of cool. And right away, when I met him when I was 17, it was just, our relationship just clicked. And we really have this deep, strong human respect for each other. So, and he's the reason why I'm in Manitoba, and that I can finish off my football career, the way I've dreamt of finishing it off. So definitely like being grateful for the coaches. That's one of the first things that pop up in my head. And also, Lori, always taking care of us, and Coach Cole Scheller, like he's been helping me with my rehab, like via Zoom and stuff. He always makes room for me, and it makes time for me. And when we do get to talk and like chat and recap about my knee, it's always good seeing him and knowing that I have that support, not only from like that actual football side of things, but also from the strength and health and conditioning side of things. So, sorry for rambling, but
Oh, no, it's
popping in my head. But
of
yeah,
course.
definitely. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I was gonna say, and that's how these thoughts will manifest themselves, is that it'll be like an avalanche, right? A snowball that grows and grows and grows. Yeah. Especially when you mention many of the names of the coaching staff of the University of Manitoba Bisons. Being in the locker room or in the coach's room, almost every day after practice last year, and being there before and being there after games. I just love the environment of football. Like, even though, I'll never play organized tackle again, I remember thinking after I was done playing, I was like, oh, like I'll probably miss this and all this stuff. And I was like, honestly, I don't really, because the game of football, is never going away. So it changes, right? The relationship that you have with people and with sports can change. And I think for the better, right? So when you go through that experience of having to, the team's got your back, and now the coach is like, okay, like this is where I'm fighting uphill. It's the opposite, right? So you see that things can change with the dynamic of being around the football team, and that, not to, and like you said, not that you've never had to prove yourself before, you just walk on and you're the show, but having to really build that relationship with the team collaboratively and with individuals is a challenge in and of itself, especially in university football. I know that even when I was at the University of Calgary, the 1 year I was there, that it wasn't easy, because you're not from there, and Manitoba recruits out of any Canada West school more out of province players than any other team. So when I was at University of Calgary, everybody, head and shoulders more than anybody, more out of province players on any Canada West team than any, like, period, end of story. So at a team like University of Calgary, almost every player is from Alberta, with the exception of maybe like 15 players to 20 players are from a scattered, array of provinces across Canada. So it's tough to, to maybe fit in initially, or to earn respect for players, especially if you're in a position where you started as a redshirt, because I'm sure a thing that you've noticed, right? University football, and the higher up you get, like the higher the number of egos that exist. Not saying that, I think, very highly of many of the players in the Bisons, especially with the ones I've interacted with. Excellent team environment, and one of the best that I've seen in the many, many years of all the team. But obviously you can't be ignorant enough to ignore the fact that there, are egos in football teams, university alike, across the entire league, and that it's tough when
Yeah.
I talked with Shooter, right?
Yep.
You see guys that only respect you if you're in the same demographic as them. If you're starting, they respect you. If you're starting or on the same group, right, offense or defense, they respect you.
Mm.
Unless you do something absolutely fantastic in a game, then they'll respect you. But in a football team, obviously respect is earned, but respect should also be given in order for there to be a mutual exchange of respect. You know what I mean? So like in terms of your dynamic with fitting into the team or earning the respect from players, what is the first thing that, or I guess what's the first experience you had once you remember the team with this, being the first, female player to ever be in a USports football team? I'm
Yeah.
sure that didn't come as just like, oh, that's really cool from every single player in the team, or that's it's not just a run of the mill everyday occurrence, right? So what was the first experience to not just having a culture shock of being in Winnipeg, but being that pioneer for women in women's football on the U of M?
What do you mean by like the first experience?
Well, I guess like once you like were with the team, like when training camp started, like now things are rolling, now you're a member of the team and now you're building relationships with other players. And what was that first experience like now being a pioneer in terms of being the first like female, player on a U Sports football team?
So that that this is where things get a little complicated as well, because so I tore 2 ACLs.
Oh, damn.
Uh, so my first ACL was grade 12 going into university. So I was actually talking with Coach Dobie about coming, because we do grade 13. A lot of athletes do grade 13 in Ontario. So I was discussing with Coach Dobie, okay, I'll come to the University of Manitoba in not this year, next year. So I'll do grade 13, get bigger, faster, stronger, whatever, and then come the following year. And he had already had his recruiting class at the time. Like it was already set. But then things changed. We're going back and forth. And I said, well, and I realized like for the school aspect and for family reasons as well, I needed to go to school in 2017, not 2018. So I was texting coach and I was trying to get a hold of him, and I know he must have been super stressed. He must have been super stressed about the this situation, because it's different, it's unprecedented, and I know he was doing a lot of thinking because he wanted to do the right thing. And I was like, can I was trying to get a hold of him. Can I come this year? I already applied to University of Manitoba. I got accepted. That's the only school that I'm going to. And I finally called him and I said, my ACL is torn anyways. I'm very limited. I can't do this. I can't hit. I can't really run. Can I just come as, not as a player, but can I come into the program? I don't have to be on the roster. I'm not looking to be on the roster. I just want to watch film. I just want to work with the strength and conditioning coach. I just want to be at practice, feel what it's like, see what it's like, and just be in that environment. And when I explained it to him like that, he was like, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just come. So I came into that program my first year not being on the roster, but sort of being in the background and just watching.
Being the fly on the wall.
And yeah, so well, not really. I mean, I tried, but it's obvious that I'm there. And then the plan was I was going to do a tryout for the team so I can, actually, just like everybody else, try out during spring camp or whatever. Unless you're one of those players that get to sign
Yeah,
right
of course.
away.
Then that's
Then,
buying,
you're going to the school. But situation, I had this weird, so I had Achilles and foot injury. And I tried to figure it out with Lori, and then it was still like bugging me. My Achilles was fine, it was bugging. Anyways, I went to like 4 physiotherapists, couple like 2-3 doctors, and then finally by the end of the summer, right before my tryout for camp, I found out, oh, like, you're overtraining, so you got this fracture thing in your heel. I was like, oh, okay. So basically, long story short, I didn't end up doing camp again. So I was going into my second year, and I didn't do camp because of my injury. And then I wasn't expecting it, but Coach Dobie, like, he put me on the roster after pictures were taken. And I wasn't expecting that at all, because in my head I was like, man, like, I didn't get that tryout in. I'm probably going to go to spring camp. But how I kind of look at it is that entire year was my tryout. It wasn't traditional, it wasn't orthodox, but that entire year of me having to prove myself in different ways, and excelling in those areas, that even though I'm very quiet in the stadium, that's what put me on the roster. And it was hard because I was very quiet the entire time. I didn't talk much. I sort of, and even now, I don't really talk much in the stadium. I'm quite quiet. I just listen and I observe, and I just kind of take mental notes. Or even like, if coach says something really profound or really funny or something, I'll just like write it in my notebook. so
Mm-hmm.
I have it, so I can remember it and go back into it. And I think because I'm so quiet, there's a lot of misconceptions of me.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, it's like, you had guys who were like Shooter, who was able to observe the benefits that I am and was bringing, and my work ethic and my discipline, and he saw all of that. There's guys like him who I really love and respect. By the way, I love Shooter. I really respect Shooter. And then there are guys who just didn't really understand the situation, which is fine. Like, very unprecedented. Not much information was given to them. So there was some friction there at the same time. But the thing is, it's like nobody ever really came up and asked me. Nobody had the guts. And, I'm going to say it straightforward. Nobody had the guts to ask me questions that they had, and so a lot of assumptions were being made because of that. And it's like, it's fine, whatever, people talk. And finally last year I was able to get the pads on, the equipment on, and improve myself in that way. So finally things have settled. Like, and I think especially with that drill, like if you're late to practice, you got to hit that bag.
Mm-hmm.
That pushing drill, you
Yeah,
gotta
of
push
course.
for 100 yards.
Yeah, yeah.
So nobody was going up. It was Adamopolis, and none of the DBs were going up. And I was like, okay, I'll hold the bag, for Steven. And I heard some guys, they were talking some ish, and I was just like, whatever, I don't care. Like, I've done this type of stuff 1,000 times. I'm cool with Steven, whatever. So I was holding the bag, and I was really making him work the entire time. And then I started hearing like people cheering. I'm like, why is everyone cheering? Like, it's not normally, like, it's hype, but it's not normally this hype. And then, we got done the drill, and we're panting and we're tired. And then guys who've never dapped me up before, they're running down the field and they're dapping me up. And, these are guys with, a little bit egos, right? And I was like, oh, like, that's what it took, I guess, for me to prove myself, is to show that, like, I'm a physical athlete. So it took me until my third year for them to, for the majority of them to see me in a different light. And, it was just mainly, I think I was just, and I'm still just misunderstood because I'm quiet. And I have talked a couple times. We've had a couple team meetings where I've addressed issues. I remember my first year, we kind of had like a team meeting where we addressed whatever issues we had, and nobody was really speaking up. And then I had so much buildup from like not only football, but like a whole bunch of other things
Mm-hmm.
happening that I wasn't used to about Winnipeg. And I just I just kind of like let it all out. And that's when a lot of them turned their heads and they were like, oh, so she's serious. Like, oh, okay.
Did they
That's
think you were on
because
vacation?
no. No, it's just like they didn't really know what I was about.
Mm-hmm.
And then now they kind of had an idea of what I was about. So, but yeah, I guess it took me until really my third year for me to feel comfortable, really, and for the guys to be, I think, comfortable with me and actually see me as a player and as an asset,
Mm-hmm.
And for the guys who don't, it doesn't bug me, you know. It's not my responsibility.
No.
And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way,
Oh
right?
no,
Like
not at all. Yeah.
I really care about those guys. Don't get me wrong.
Well, of
Like
course, yeah.
I
Obviously, the big part of it is making sure that you control what you can control. That's one of the most beaten to death phrases in all of the world of
Yep.
football and many
Yep.
sports in life. Like, just control what you
Yep.
can control. And obviously, you can't.
Yep.
You're not responsible for other people's feelings if you're just responsible
Yep.
for your actions and your conduct. And that
Mhm.
obviously can be a difficult thing
Mhm.
to digest when you feel that you're misunderstood, especially in an environment where it takes, a few years to really
Yeah.
get the gears turning in the heads
Yeah.
of all the guys on the team saying, oh, like this person's serious and they're a physical athlete and
Yeah.
they can, put you to the test, et cetera, and all these other things.
Yeah. And it's like, yeah. And sorry to cut you off,
oh,
but
no,
like
no
I
worries, no
was
worries.
literally talking with Coach Dobie right before the pandemic, and I was like, Coach, I think I'm really misunderstood. And he just laughed out loud. He's like, yeah, yes, you are. He's like, yes, you are. I'm like, oh, well, I guess, it's not just me who feels that way. So
Yeah, and I think he's very understanding with all the years of wisdom and experience that he's accrued
oh yeah.
over his entire coaching career, and many of the stories,
Yes.
endless amounts of stories that he told us in his class
Yes.
for coaching theory
Mhm.
was that, even when you're a coach, the last person I was recording with is Tom Higgins. He was the
Mhm.
head coach for the Edmonton Eskimos in the early 2000s. He was the defense coordinator when I was at the University of Calgary. He's the current
Mhm.
defensive coordinator for the University of Alberta Golden Bears. And
Mhm.
one of the things he talked about in terms of being a coach is, don't let the highs be too high and don't let the lows be too low, because you have to learn how to deal with everybody in the team. And Coach Toby
Yeah.
shared the story of him, wanting to be a rah-rah guy to really get everyone going. But like, that can be difficult to handle if things go poorly or when things go poorly, because they will eventually. Maybe
Yep.
not, now, or maybe not in, the next quarter, but things will go bad. You just got to be able to stay kind of like in this medium range, not like this and not like that. And so,
Yep.
so with your outlook on now going forward with your career playing for the Manitoba Bisons, what's one of the pieces of the legacy that you want to leave with having been an alumnus of the University of Manitoba Bisons when your time with them is done?
I haven't even thought of that. Honestly, I can't give you an answer right now.
Or even like outside
Yeah.
of football, in terms of like, what it means to be like a trailblazer for women in football, or what, now that there's precedence, that you have been a member of the Bisons, that other people can look forward to doing this, in terms of like how you want to inspire the next generation. What is one thing that you think you want to achieve out of your time playing for the Bisons?
I think, man, it's just like being able, like having the guts just to do something. Like I knew right away, like I told you before, right away my intuition, I knew, oh, football, this is it. And I know not everybody has this experience, and it's not something that I can articulate to you,
Mm-hmm.
like that spark. But it was literally, I knew this is what I needed to do. Like, I needed to do this. It wasn't like I wanted to do it. I wanted to, but I needed to do it. And I think having the guts and the courage to actually do something about your life, and having the, man, I know not everybody's like spiritual and stuff, but really, man, what drove me through everything is just having spiritual toughness. And some people aren't gonna like that, but
That's okay.
that's just how I live my life, man. It's spiritual toughness, and having that courage to do it. So, because people say, like, I don't know, people back home say, like, I come across as confident, which I can't see that. And people are like, oh, but you're so confident, so it's like easy, blah blah blah. It's like, no, there have been times where I have been scared to death. And there's some times on the field where I literally was like contemplating, man, like, that was a close one. Like, I could have really had some bad damage there. And I feared certain things greatly, but it's just taking a breath and having the courage to just do it, no matter how scared you are. Because, man, I can't tell you how many times I've been scared.
Yeah, I remember talking with this with Coach Pierre, and one thing he talked about in terms of his outlook on coaching is, the fear of failure that drives him, right? Like that being prepared and being calculated and understanding all the logistics of what you're doing is a fear of failure, right? You don't want to fail. So you are driven by that fear to then go and find all the means to succeed. And so when you think about fear of failure, do you think that it's a positive force in your life that helps drive you to success, or do you find that it can be sometimes a little overwhelming to deal with, or is there a bit of a balance?
Man, it's not even about fear of failure. Like, it's not even about, like, I don't feel that way about failure. It's just like, it's just something I have to do, and I have to finish. And there's an opportunity, and no matter how scared I am, I should take it, because this is my opportunity. It's not about, oh, I'm scared of failing. Oh, I'm scared of how people view me. Oh, like, oh, what if I don't do, like, no, for me personally, it has nothing to do with the fear of failure. It's just living your life. Live your life and earn your life. And realizing, okay, this is a challenge that's been given to me. Okay, I'm gonna deal with this next. It's not, and that's just for me personally. But I remember Coach P talking about that, and discussing that with us before. And it definitely shows he's a very prepared individual. Like, he does hours and hours and hours of film study.
Yeah,
So
he watches film a lot, and I know that,
yes.
especially from his preparation as an instructor and as a coach, that he loves the aspect of teaching, and that it's very important, right? And so and I'm sure that rubs off on you guys in terms of preparation and watching film, and never being satisfied with just being okay, or never just sitting down after the first time you feel success, because like you said, it's like, okay, you go do this, done, next. Okay, what else do I got to do? And it's an important aspect of, especially being a defensive back, because sometimes you're on an island. It's,
Yeah.
and I remember him telling me about his preference for DBs. He talked about, he's like, I'd rather have a guy as a coach that would, risk giving up the game-winning touchdown, and only, like, he'll give up the game-winning touchdown, but every, like, 14 out of 15 targets he stops, rather than the guy that gives up, 7 yards every single time, but never gives up a touchdown or never gets exposed. And that's a big thing with being a defensive back. And I'm sure that in your experience, do you find that is what do you find that there's an interesting balance between, being on an island versus having help in the secondary?
Um, Man, it helps having help. It does help having help, but I think, like, Oh man, like I don't know, like so I maybe if you played like corner, it might be different. But also our system is like very like it's match concept, so you're always communicating with people and you're always like interacting. So I don't know. I haven't really thought of that.
And yeah, I know that. I mean, obviously, yeah. If you play corner, it's like there's times where you're by yourself. But again, the defensive system you guys play, it's definitely a bit different than what most teams will play, and that creates an interesting dynamic for opposing offenses. So
Mm.
just before we're out of time here, we're
It's
gonna wrap up
interactive.
with yeah. So we're gonna wrap up with one more question before we wrap up today,
Hmm.
and so and this may have been something that you continue to believe or have been brought up earlier, but what is the biggest thing that drives you every day when you wake up? What's the biggest thing that gets you going, that really makes you feel alive or ready to attack whatever you need to do?
Um, Actually, I was literally just asked this question the other day, and I don't have like that one thing that like I don't have that. I just get up and do my job. You know, like here's the end goal, and you know what? Like it's I'm just ever since I was a kid, like very little, I've just been super passionate about life. I hate waking up late. I like to have not like I like to have routine. I like to wake up early. I try to beat the sun um as much as I can, even though it's difficult. But I like to have that routine, and I just like to live my life accordingly. And I'm passionate about life, so I don't have that, and I'm not in that position. Like it's not like I have kids, for example,
Hmm.
where maybe it's like maybe for example for my mother back then it was like I got mouths to feed. I got a kid to raise. So maybe that was that fire, but for me it's like it's not something I don't have that. What is it that helps me wake up in the morning? I don't really have that. It's you just do it.
100%. And
Sort of.
that's, I think
Yeah.
that's why Nike has their slogan, just do it, right? Just go do it. Like,
Mm.
don't worry about it. Just go do it. Get it done.
Like wake up in the morning. What are you gonna do if you don't wake up in the morning? You know, like you were given another day. Just wake up and be productive. You know.
Yeah,
But yeah.
it's important to I've heard that, we've all heard the phrase from Nike, just do it. And I remember I was at a business conference where they talked about, people are always so worried about where to start and how to do things, but just do the thing. Just go do it.
Mm.
If you don't do
Yeah.
something, you don't do anything, nothing's going to happen. You can think and
Yeah.
you can plan, but if you don't actually go and take action, it's
Yeah.
never going to happen, no matter
No.
what.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. It's that simple.
Well, Reina, thank you so much for having joined us today and for having shared the stories and the adversity that you had to go through during your football career. It's been a great pleasure to hear about many of the intricacies that go into the tough challenges that people face and how they overcome them, and how you're actually never really out of the woods, and that there's always something next that will come up, and staying within the parameters of the highs and lows will allow you to handle any challenges that you have to face.
Oh man, no, thank you very much for having me, and it was fun. I had fun.
I'm glad to hear it. Well, thank you everyone again for listening to episode 13 with Reina Iizuka, University of Manitoba Bisons defensive back.